Be sure to like and subscribe to our Facebook page. We are at facebook.com/faithandwhatever. Also, you can find us on YouTube. If you go to the search bar and just type in Faith and Whatever podcast, we come up there. And then lastly, if you have some type of question or some type of thing that you would like us to talk about on the show, a topic of any variety that you think is interesting on faith or just the Christian viewpoint on things or how it interacts, either send us a message on Facebook or feel free to email us at faithandwhatever@gmail.com. So we do have a couple more news topics that we're going to talk about here, and keeping kind of right along with the theme of the new year and how we're going to be electing a new POTUS fairly soon, right, with everything coming up. I would like to discuss this idea of religious liberty very quickly and just get a quick, couple minute reaction or kind of initial reactions from you guys. Ted Cruz, right, the lovely counterbalance to Donald Trump in the Republican GOP race, is someone from Texas who we would all say is a bit conservative in the things that he loves and believes and stands for, and religious liberty, gun rights, the ability to shoot stuff, which is all cool.
Ability to shoot stuff or right?
Yeah, right or ability. Right, just because you have the right doesn't mean you're good at it. So over the weekend, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Judge Antonin Scalia passed away, and he was like 79, and he'd been on the Supreme Court justice bench for almost 30 years, I think since he was 50, so for like 29 years or something like that. And so now, right, Obama is being tasked with getting ready to choose a new Supreme Court justice. And this is a really big deal, right, because Scalia was, notoriously conservative, known for really his just great rhetoric, his, verbal repartee were always quite impressive, and you saw a lot of the back and forth between him and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so the lovable Ted Cruz was on Meet the Press the other day, and this article that we're analyzing, that we're going to talk about, is actually from pathos.com. And pathos.com is, it's got like a subset on it called The Friendly Atheist. And The Friendly Atheist is run by Hemant Mehta, and I hope I didn't butcher that too badly.
Did, but we're sorry.
And I follow this guy's stuff a lot on Facebook. I mean, he is definitely an atheist, but he is very insightful. He's very fair. He doesn't just bash Christianity for the sake of bashing Christianity. Too often there are some things in there that
there's plenty of insightful atheists, but what you meant is Christians shouldn't just stop listening because they heard that word.
Right. So this is not a buzzword for you to freak out and turn off the podcast.
Exactly.
So on Meet the Press, Ted Cruz told host Chuck Todd that if Obama were to select a liberal justice, this would mean the end of religious liberty, adding that religious symbols would be, quote, sandblasted off of the tombstones of our fallen veterans, unquote. That's a very specific and
specific action that's going to happen.
It's just like a giant. Initially, I just want to hear your guys' initial thoughts and just reactions, and just see where that takes us.
I think it's an overreaction, probably on purpose. Right? I'm sure he knows it's not quite.
So
like
what would be the value of overreacting on purpose if you're Ted Cruz?
Oh, we're talking about Ted Cruz. I'm sorry, I thought that was the analysis of the article writer. No, it could also be on purpose by Ted Cruz as well to help push votes towards him because he represents the opposite of that. At least he wants people to perceive it that way. I think we certainly are in an interesting time because either Obama's going to get a second Supreme Court justice who represents values similar to his elected, right?
Right.
Or that system's not going to work out in time, and there's going to be a new president elected before they can find somebody, and the people that who may get elected include a Ted Cruz, a Trump, Bernie Sanders, or Hillary Clinton, and all four of those are very interesting people to be getting the new Supreme Court justice, for choosing the candidates to be the Supreme Court justice. All four of those are very interesting people.
Now,
to
is
be in
that
charge of
I'm not really familiar. Is that a possibility that it will take longer to get a new Supreme Court justice than it will to find the new president?
Well, because what happens is the president, whoever the current president is, gives a candidate, and then they go through a process where various political bodies of the United States judge their value and worth for the job, and they can reject them. And there's been rejections in the past.
So Obama could maybe start the process. And
Well,
then-
Obama doesn't elect. He elects
recommends.
candidates. He
He
recommends.
appoints, and then the Senate has to confirm it.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
decide.
So I guess my question is why can't that get done before there's a new
Because
president?
the Senate has already said that it's not going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, they said that they're going to
It just
say
takes too
no.
long. It just takes too
Well,
long.
they're just going to block anybody Obama puts up.
Okay.
For
It's
the
a
hope that a
political move.
Republican wins the election, right?
For the last 80 years, when a president is at the end of his term, it has generally been kind of an unspoken rule that he doesn't appoint a Supreme Court justice if a vacancy happens.
Okay.
So, and if he tries to, then generally they try and block it.
Why is that? Why is that an unspoken idea?
Probably partly because when you're on the way out and you can't be reelected, you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't have to. There's no consequences for him if he appointed somebody who's.
Bad for the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then, more specifically, then, what do we think about our idea of religious liberty coming to an end as believers? I have a friend who believes that the Christian church will go underground in our lifetime, and the Christian church in America specifically will go underground in our lifetime. Do you think that this is the start of that, or as we look for?
Absolutely not. But let's assume for a second that it is. That's probably the best thing that could happen to Christianity. The worst thing for Christianity is convenience. Every time Christians get used to their context, every time Christianity becomes a very convenient faith, it often kind of gets a little more shallow. It historically makes bad political decisions.
Crusades.
Right? And sort of the worst thing for Christian faith is convenience. The best thing, the thing that sharpens Christian faith, makes us the best version of ourselves, tends to be when we're in the least convenient context.
Intense persecution.
And so, honestly, if that were the case, which it's not, then that would be wonderful for the sharpening of Christian faith, for the sharpening of our community and for our beliefs, and for making us have to actually consider what our faith means to us and how we're going to live in this in whatever context we're in. That would be wonderful. I see you have something to add there, Garrett.
Well, I mean, I've never really verbalized it like that, but I know some people are really passionate and really upset when our religious freedoms are persecuted, but and I've always been a little unsure of how to feel about that because, James, like you say, it only makes us stronger Christians. And the Bible is quite clear. I mean, blessed are those who are persecuted, right? And so to be so upset that we try to block it and stop it and, incite fear that we as Christians or even other religious people are being persecuted. I mean, our own text would say that that is not a bad thing. That that is not something to. Now, I'm not saying that I would want that. I
No,
would
of
want
course
to be
not. I don't think
persecuted, but I mean,
anybody of us would want.
it's just so many times in the Bible when it's saying that persecution is a good thing, and that Paul even prays that we have that kind of effect that we would be persecuted, and blessed are those. So blessed are the righteous, and the meek, and also the persecuted. So it's in the same kind of
Breath.
in the same breath that it's almost like we are to behave like, so we are to act in a way that our faith becomes persecuted because we're so counterculture and we're making such a difference that we're going to be persecuted in the same sense that we are to live righteously.
Yeah, and so I know there are, especially out here in Southern California, where things are typically a little bit more conservative in our pocket, right? There are some people who would already say that the Christian church is already undergoing persecution, right? We've already kind of started to suffer in some regard due to the things that are happening, right? And there seems to be attacks on Christianity in terms of the civil liberties that Christians should be able to enjoy that they're kind of not. And so I'm curious as to think, do we have a right to, and then as a devil's advocate kind of thing, do we have a right to be able to stand up for those things as Christians living in a non-Christian world for the sake of protecting religious liberties that include not only our own, but the religious liberties of those that are opposing to ours, right? So if we start to get persecuted, does that not open the door for our Muslim brothers and sisters who would like to enjoy some type of the same civil liberties? Do we not have as a Christian majority, right, as probably the largest voice or the loudest voice in America, I think most people would still self-identify as Christians, do we not have a reason or responsibility to speak up and try and protect civil liberties and religious liberties specifically at, quote unquote, all costs, whatever that might look like, for the sake of those who are in other religious faith traditions, right? And so I'm asking more like the snowball effect. And so I'm just curious as to if we really do lose religious liberties. I don't think we have, and I don't think the Christian church is being persecuted terribly in America, that is. Do you think that we should be vocal and outspoken as believers for the sake of our constitutional protection so that those who are in other faith traditions can enjoy the same liberties that we get, Chris?
Well, I think we should do that in part just as Americans. That's one of our responsibilities as Americans and as voters and people who have a say in their government that a lot of people in other places don't. I think that responsibility is just there, simply as Americans.
So there's value then in because we do exist in this dual kingdom, right, kind of setup, and we have to be able to walk that line. And so I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting article. I think it'll be something that's worth watching. And again, I think Ted Cruz might be pandering.
He is. He's trying to get through the primaries. And so he's trying to pander to the far right religious vote. And
I think that what an incredible witness if we try to protect religious liberties for the sake of so that we can practice our religion and others can also practice theirs. I don't know if it's typically done with that heart. I think that
right.
For example, I kind of struggle with Christians being really upset that the Ten Commandments are removed from some public space, which is
it's always that meme.
It could be
prayer
upsetting.
And God out of schools, and now all the school
It could be
shooters
upsetting,
and
sure.
shootings are happening.
But would those same people, want other religious symbols to be next to the Ten Commandments? I can't imagine that they would. But I don't know if you can have it both ways.
Right.
I don't know if you can only protect your own religious freedoms and liberties at the exclusion of others.
Yeah.
To put some things in perspective here, the book of Acts, chapter 5, here's how it portrays the apostles in the face of sort of social, religious, political persecution. They've just been flogged for preaching Jesus by the religious and political leaders of Jerusalem. And this is what it says. It refers to they, and they is the apostles and possibly the church. It says, as they left this flogging, they rejoiced that they were considered worthy to suffer dishonor for the sake of the name of Jesus. They rejoiced that they were worthy of this persecution in the name of Jesus. Like that's
incredible.
Yeah, that's
they celebrated. They had a party.
Right. And we shouldn't be afraid of losing our political hold on America. We should, according to Acts at least, we should be look forward to the time of sharpening it can bring, to the time of goodness it can bring to our community and allow us to live up to our faith. We have a lot in churches. If you attend a church, we talk a lot about our willingness to suffer,
right,
our willingness to do things for Jesus, but then we also kind of have to admit, but that's not us right now. Texts like this encourage us to actually look forward to that possibility that we can live up to this thing we're supposedly willing to do, right? And so, it's. But to your question, Josh, should Christians be protecting the rights of non-Christians, let's say Muslims? I'm not so sure that I could create a biblical answer that says that's part of the Christian faith.
Sure.
But I think Chris said it right, that it's a part
cultural
of the
answer.
American ideal.
Absolutely.
That this is supposed to be a place where people who are persecuted for their religious beliefs can find some kind of safety. Early in American history, Catholics were persecuted quite a bit for being Catholic. And what the government did in that context was they sanctioned off some land of America to be a sanctuary for Catholics, and we call that land now Maryland. That was the original
Disneyland.
Right. Maryland was the place where Catholics were supposed to be safe. We saw that they were being persecuted for their religious beliefs.
We gave them the worst portion of the northeast corner.
I wouldn't know anything about how
Maryland's
bad.
Beautiful.
It's awful.
If you live in Maryland, you're lucky.
So, and that's the American ideal, to create a safe place for religious belief.
Yeah.
That is the American ideal.
Well, it's just something to be aware of and kind of watch, right? I think we all want to be considered worthy, right, when we face trials of many kinds. But I know that if I'm honest, I don't know if I'm the first one wanting to sign up to be
Fair enough.
persecuted.
I think I last week I mentioned that I did a veteran's funeral, and I was standing next to the family, and the director of the funeral of the whole memorial place comes up and hands them a paper with all the religious symbols that can be put on a tombstone, and of course there's all of them, right? And I'm sure if you had some other religion and you went through all the right applications,
yeah.
you could get those included. So I think if anything,
Go
the direction
Ted.
of our country is going to be including more religions and being more universal as opposed to excluding just Christian symbols.
Right.
We're going to great lengths right now to protect beliefs in the Force, right? You can actually be a Jedi in this
Yeah.
country. So
No, I
think
totally
our
am.
Christian faith is probably not being persecuted. We might be losing our majority hold on things, the convenience of being on top. But there's nothing wrong with being put into a fair bracket with the rest.
Unless you're Louis C.K. has got a really funny bit about that for us as white people when we're no longer the dominant race. He talks about how when you're dropping, you're going to go way down. We're not going to drop to like 2 or 3, but we're going to drop far lower. So anyway, that'll just be something to watch and kind of be aware of as the year unfolds, right? Where the people are in terms of their election of this Supreme Court justice. Last one that I want to talk about today for our news stuff is Netflix. I love Netflix series. I have watched almost every Netflix original series. Usually within a weekend, I go through them.
Automatically good if it's from Netflix.
And that's how I feel right now. I have
And I
yet
agree.
to find
Almost.
one that has been bad. The only one that was weird was Sense8, and I still don't know if I like that or dislike
Come
that.
on, that's
Yeah,
all right.
you tried to
Um,
make me watch it.
And yeah, well, I told you that.
But
would
you
just
didn't
be-
know if it was good?
Because I said
told
the
you that.
exact same thing to Josh. I said, Josh is like, is it good? I go, I don't know.
Right, and then that's exactly how I felt. Yeah,
He
that's
asked
totally
me,
right.
Is it worth watching?
You've
I
seen it
said-
a couple times.
No,
Instead
I
of you- oh, okay.
I said, I'm not sure, but you can watch it if you want.
yeah, and
And we talked about it, and
I
it was,
went through it.
we kind of feel the same way about it.
It was. I told you to watch it, James, largely because of the fact that
You don't
would
like
be
me.
interested in the storyline, and it is an entertaining storyline. The Wachowskis, right? No longer the brothers Wachowski, but the Wachowskis who did the Matrix.
They're no longer brothers. How does that work?
Because one of them
Brother
has
and
had
sister
gender
now.
reassignment.
yeah, one of them had a gender reassignment surgery.
Still the Wachowski siblings.
Yeah,
Siblings,
yeah,
for sure.
They're still
Yes.
related. They
I'm
don't-
learning so much today.
Yeah, they don't stop.
That happened
related.
quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So Daredevil is coming back out in March. Have you guys all seen Daredevil?
Yep.
Have we all
Yes.
watched
So
it?
good.
Okay.
So good.
What did we think? Just real quickly on a 1 to 10, as far as
I'd give it like a 8.5.
8.5. James.
I think that's a good score. 8.5. You know, it's great for television.
Sure.
Yeah.
Garrett.
Yeah, I agree. I would say an 8, not an 8.5, only because
All
I
right,
just
take off
wish
your
it-
headphones. We're fighting.
I just had to wait so long for season 2.
Yeah, that's fair. I gave it a solid 7.2. It's a little bit slow in the first 4 episodes, but after
Yes.
that it picks
I know,
up
but
really
it's
hard.
quality
The second
character
episode's
building.
great.
A
but
little
yeah.
slow, a little slow. It would
But
be
it's you got to think of it as the origin season.
right. Origin stories can still be more interesting than that, though.
The villain was interesting.
Well, I thought it was great until he got his actual Daredevil costume.
Yeah, then
That
he
was the
looked
last
kinda
episode.
weird.
Yeah, but like
That was
his
great.
homemade costume looked way better.
Yeah, his homemade costume was pretty rad. So, season 2 comes out. One of the things that was very confusing to me is how dark it is. Right, Jessica Jones is substantially darker. Than,
I haven't seen that
than
yet.
Even watch
it's
it.
all right.
Yeah, it's not. I don't like it as much, but it's not bad. Right, so Netflix still has yet to put out something that was bad.
Well, David Tennant's always great.
And yes, and but Daredevil, the second season is supposed to be even darker. Now, so
With
I'm
the
just
Punisher. It's gonna have the Punisher.
Yeah.
But Daredevil was always a pretty dark comic. He's
Right.
a dark
Was.
character. I
Right,
mean, he's
right.
Daredevil.
yeah,
Yes.
fair enough. I'm interested, to kind of see.
He's had some eras in the comic books where he was nearly an antagonist, where most of the hero community in the story actually did not appreciate him, expelled him because he went too far in his search for justice. He actually kind of becomes, I doubt this will affect the show in any way, but in the comics he actually becomes basically a kingpin at one point. He becomes the guy that's on top of the crime chain.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that all that to say, I'm glad that season 2 is coming. It drops March 18th, 2016. So this year, next March, just in a few weeks. And
I'm excited.
I have just been very pleased. I'm very glad that Daredevil got a reboot after the Ben Affleck fiasco.
Yes.
Yeah, just awful. I mean, absolutely one of the worst
I
things
asked
I've ever
people,
watched
have you
in my
watched
entire
Daredevil? Referring to the Netflix one within a couple of weeks, and they just looked at me with a weird look, and I go, "You think I'm talking about Ben Affleck?" I'm not. This excitement is
Claim to
nothing.
fame, by the way, not my fame, unfortunately. My sister-in-law's husband was the boy, was
The
Ben
boy version
Affleck
of Ben
as
Affleck?
a boy
When
in
he
that
gets
movie.
blinded.
Yeah, he played the boy Ben Affleck in that
Oh.
movie.
That's okay. That's acceptable to be as a part of.
Apparently, like the original script and idea for the original was supposed to be
awesome.
really good, and because Kevin Smith was
Yeah, I was
actually
gonna
a
say they
writer
just should have had
for
Kevin Smith write it.
was supposed to be a writer
Jon
for
Favreau,
Daredevil.
directed it, didn't he?
I'm sorry.
Didn't Jon Favreau direct it?
I thought it was Kevin Smith.
Yeah, was
Jon
it?
Favreau did the first Iron Man and
Maybe
the second.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, he did the first and second Iron Man. But Kevin Smith, apparently the original idea was really good, but then Fox kept on
Just destroyed it.
Did what producers do.
Well, it did what Fox producers do.
True.
Yeah.
And this is before Fox really learned how to handle their comic
because
book.
they
And gave us such
properties.
great things like Fantastic Four.
Right, they hit a home run with their Fantastic Four.
But they're also giving us
Jessica
Deadpool.
Alba, I don't
yeah.
care what anybody says. Jessica Alba was great in Fantastic Four. Really a stellar performance.
So what I like about both Daredevil,
Fight me. Yeah.
Netflix, and Jessica Jones is the villains are probably the best villains in any kind of television. I don't know if you can call Netflix shows television shows. I guess they are. Right? And it's almost kind of the new kind of postmodern mentality where there's always a reason why they're a villain. And you have to go through a couple of episodes where you sympathize with them, right? It's somewhere in the middle where you find out that they are the way they are because of something terrible that happened to them. You know,
Yeah.
so it complicates it.
Now, you're right. It's a very postmodern thing, but honestly, comics have been doing that for quite a while.
Sure.
Certainly,
Yeah, but
there's
comics are
what we
lame,
call
James.
golden and silver age comics are very black and white, very justice against evil, and it's very archetypal. But the later, like starting in the 80s, complexity to villains did become the hallmark of comics. That's when
You feel like that's newer to television
Yeah.
media?
Well, you know,
Well, yeah,
this is-
because only 9 people read comics between the 80s and when Netflix started.
I have a theory about, once you're an established medium of storytelling that's like culturally accepted, fully accepted by the culture, then you get like constrained by that acceptance and you have to follow into conventional forms
Okay.
of storytelling. And those mediums that aren't fully accepted yet, which comic books were that up until recently,
Uh-huh.
Still not
Um,
accepted.
it gives they have a freedom
Uh-huh.
to develop and break certain rules. I mean, in
Do
the
you think
80s.
Netflix is the marriage of themselves being an emergent media, marketplace for people to see media, and also with comic books makes for like the perfect storm.
Yeah,
of
I mean,
staying true to the comic.
yeah,
the epicness.
I'm on board for what Netflix is doing with their comic book heroes. This idea that there's going to be 4 TV shows. There's the Daredevil, and then there's Jessica Jones. The next is Luke Cage, and then after that, the Immortal Iron Fist. Which one doesn't fit those 4?
I don't know who that is.
He's another. He's
didn't know
basically
Jessica
another
Jones, right.
B-list comic.
Okay.
He's never.
And then combine them all into one television.
They are.
show?
They're
Okay.
gonna make.
Heroes
They're gonna
for
bring
hire.
them together.
Actually, I heard that.
I told you that.
Daredevil was not supposed to have a second. They were all going to have one season,
Yeah,
and then after that, just be combined.
but Daredevil's too good.
It
Yeah,
is
no, it is
pretty-
good. What I
it is
liked, and this is
pretty
going to sound
awesome.
really strange, what I like about Daredevil is that there's blood in it, right? So when you watch a
Right.
Marvel movie and someone like punches someone or stabs someone, it's like they fall over and die.
Yeah.
Which I don't need blood to enjoy a show, but I guess when I talked about hard sci-fi, I guess I just like realism and making it realistic. And so
Right.
if you were to punch someone in the face 5 or 6 times, you would pull away and your hand would have like blood on it.
Right.
Daredevil has a lot of blood on him.
Especially if you're able to punch through a wall.
Sure, right. Especially if you have the ability to do the things that a lot of Marvel characters can do, a lot of
Right.
comic book characters can do.
Yeah, so just something to be, again, on the lookout for. It drops one last time on March 18th, 2016. So that will conclude our news segments and our reactionaries. So be sure to follow us on Twitter at faithinwhatever. That's faith, the letter in, whatever. Also, you can find us on facebook.com/faithandwhatever. And lastly, you can find us on YouTube by searching for us in the little search bar at Faith and Whatever Podcast.
Boom.